Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Slot. Tonight, I have with us, someone who needs no introduction, one of the major pillars in this community, the Wayne Gretzky of our
Oh boy.
hobby, in my opinion, the Wayne Gretzky of our hobby, Mr. Marty Ford himself. Marty, thank you for being here. How you doing?
Oh, what an intro. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. I don't think, yeah, I'm not Wayne Gretzky, really. I
I
guess
think you're the Wayne Gretzky
you're
of
up
this
north.
hobby. I can.
I mean, you are up north, so I could imagine. I was imagining I would probably get some kind of a hockey analogy. So
I don't know. You're well respected and well protected. I mean, we can maybe we won't get into that part, but I definitely see you as the Wayne Gretzky, right? Respectable, yet
that's
somebody who
funny.
knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I we don't have to get into that, but I don't know why I'm well protected, but I feel like that sometimes though.
Oh no! I mean, it's just little things like I remember talking with Pete from Show Me to be like, oh okay, when do we do our live? Let's start a live. When what's the date? It's like I'm free on Tuesdays. No, I can't do Tuesdays. Marty's on Tuesdays. It's just like a respect thing. It's like nobody we don't touch that, right? And I'm not saying that like anybody owns any nights or anything. It's
Right?
just
Yeah,
it was just one of those things where like you come up now. You come up in conversations when it's like, yeah, no, you don't do Tuesday. No. Nobody does Tuesday.
yeah.
It's like
Well,
because we want
it's
to be there
funny.
too. It's not because you own Tuesday. It's because we want like no. I want to be there. I don't have time to do
Yeah,
something, and then I want to hang out on Tuesday, right? So
yeah, well, it's Tuesday has been it's crazy how that came about. I think my first couple live streams, I kind of bounced around. It was just like when I felt like
yeah,
I needed to do a live stream. Like, yeah, let's do a live stream. It's fun. I was playing with Ecamm Live, and so like that was the this whole start of it. And I was like, this live streaming thing might be a lot of
yeah,
fun.
you're a Mac
So now,
guy.
yeah,
My,
and so I launched the first time, and it was like, oh, yeah, like 15 guys jumped on. That was awesome. What a great conversation. I really enjoyed the conversation. And then I started seeing this community around it. And I think it may have been Garth, uh, maybe, threw it out. He's like, Tuesdays with two lines. And I'm like, because I kind of gotten consistent over a couple weeks on Tuesdays. I'm like, well, Tuesdays actually works really good. The only thing I was fearful of is on Tuesdays, the worldwide slot car chat happens, and they would do morning and evening, and but the evening one is like on Thursdays, so it was like it was doing Tuesday morning or afternoons and then Thursday evenings. So I was like, okay, I didn't bump into those guys. I because I wanted to be respectful for things that other people had established as well. And it's funny. I think when you respect people, then the respect comes back to you. And I think that's what's
absolutely.
happened is I've tried to be respectful of other people's time slots and their time and things like that. And that's turned around back to me with like, hey, Marty is like free ends on Tuesdays. Like, let's just stay away. But I think you're right. People really enjoy the chat that happens on Tuesdays. Like sometimes I'm not even in the chat. Like I'm
Yeah,
off. Like the chat is taken off and it's in its own little world, and they're solving world problems and slot car problems and helping people, and like it's a beautiful thing. And I never want to like squash that at all. But like it's become this hangout on Tuesday nights. And like this past Tuesday we had like 100 people in. It's like
yeah.
holy
No, it's
cow,
growing. It's growing, and
unbelievable.
I think all the
Yeah.
new guys, and I know that like if I have a question, I'm like, oh, I got a question, and I know these guys are gonna answer it. I found this little trick. You got to be there first. You got to be first at the gate. Get that so Marty can answer it, and then he's talking about it so other people, and then I get the feed, and I'm like, okay, thanks guys.
Yeah.
And it's actually because of that. I said it in my last video. It's because of your chat. I think I was talking and I was saying, and I think I'd asked the question. Well, what's your favorite slot car? What if you had to
Yeah.
pick one? What's one? And I was trying to like get my handle on like these manufacturers and third party stuff.
Sure.
And somebody, I think it was George, because it was kind of like a smart aleck remark a bit, but it was funny, like in this funny way, not in a bad way at all. It was just
Yeah.
someone's like, "Well, just buy one of each and figure it out," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And that's what I'm doing. Like that shelf, you can't see it, but I've got like I'm like, "Oh, now I got a polycar. Now I got this, and now I got," and I'm just like, Psh. Anyways, we don't have to talk about that.
No, that's good though. Like that's one of the things that comes out. I've discovered things in the hobby because of the chat. There are some cars that I've never had on my table, never
Mhm.
had on the track. I've never had a chance to play with or tune or mess with, and Yeah, so it's kind of cool. So that question comes out a lot,
Yeah.
and there's about 10 questions that new people come into the chat that we've answered, 50, 60 times.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And like,
It's
and,
awesome.
and it's awesome that we've got new people that keep coming in and asking, what kind of track should I buy? I love answering that question because like my experiences with Carrera, and now I've routed my own wood, oval, and I've raced on Scale Auto now, and actually I've seen some Polycar, and so I've got an opinion on some of these other surfaces. So I feel
Hmm.
like that's a great question to have an opportunity to answer, and then the chat takes over and answers most of that stuff for me. But like, are you discovering some new slot cars back there on the shelf that you like? Because I know for a long time
Okay,
it was
so
Carrera only, right?
yeah, you can do that classic Marty thing where you're going to turn it around and you're asking me, and this is my interview, but like I respect 100% respect NSR. NSR is the new one
Yeah.
that hit the table, and Thunder Slot was up here. NSR is
Hmm.
competing, because of right
Yeah.
out of the box. I did the bad thing. I watched your video again today, the 5 things you don't do, and I'm like, I did them. But that's because Jason was over on the Monday night, and he's like, he got his car and he put it on, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I put my NSR on, and we were on the live, and I'm like, this is just melting butter on the track. I can't, and then I set it up for the track, and then it's, But thanks to you
Yeah.
guys, but this is I don't want to sidetrack on that.
Sorry. Sorry.
So give us a quick one, because I know you've done this before. A quick one. I need to refresh my memory as well. What is your slot car history? Like, have you been doing it since you were a kid? Like, what was the age you got your first hand on a controller?
So probably, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old, maybe maybe a little older. Like a lot of in the United States, it seems like a lot of boys get the slot car track for Christmas. Santa
Hmm.
Claus brings them and I got my first slot car track that was mine when I was really young. My uncle let me borrow his AFX track,
Okay.
just a little piece of it to run a couple cars for a couple days, and I was like, "This is so much fun."
Oh wow.
And right. And then I didn't have one, and so I got a TCR track for Christmas.
Nice.
Total Control
Yeah.
Racing.
Yeah.
That's the slotless, right?
Yeah.
And my brother Dusty and I, we wore that track out. Cars wore them out, ran them to the the brushes were gone, and that got put in a box, and we never ever came back to it. For a family Christmas party, my mom, kind of as a gag gift, bought us a little Tyco track, and we played with it for like that evening. Me and Dusty and my dad, and we just threw it on the floor and played with it. And that was years ago. And so we get into the pandemic, and like everybody, I'm kind of trapped in the house, and I catch a video, and it may have been MP Massimo, and I was like, oh my gosh, those cars look great, and so I started doing some research, and I told my brother, I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to build a track. So I went to my local hobby shop. We have an RC car who was a shop in town that was a Carrera dealer. And I walked in one day and he's like, Carrera didn't send me my Christmas order because everything was trapped on shipping containers out in the middle of the ocean, right? He's like, I didn't get my Christmas order, so I canceled them. Everything's on sale. And he had
Oh wow.
he had he had this car in the case,
Oh nice.
the Carrera 917, and
Yeah.
I love 917s. Like they're a all-time favorite car.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, how much do you want for that? And so I bought it. And so I had a slot car, open up the box. I'm like, Dusty, you got to see this thing. This is going to be awesome. So then I started looking for Carrera Track, and I answered an ad on Facebook Marketplace, which ended up being Tom Thumb Hobbies in Columbus, Ohio, they had a big Blue King race track there. He had these sets for sale, and so it was after Christmas, like February, 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years this February. Ended up buying a starter digital set. Came home, put it down on the floor here in the basement. Called Dusty and John Mark and said, "You guys got to get over here. This is amazing." And so they came over, and we've got this little figure eight track that we're running cars on. And the next day, John Mark texted me. He's like, "Hey, I just ordered like 20 pieces of straight track." And then my brother's like, "Hey, I ordered a bunch of curves and borders." And we started building the track. And then came over, we built the table. And so, as part of that, I posted a YouTube video of that first night racing cars on the floor. I
Yes.
just took some video. I was like, this is just taking video of these cars. It looks really cool. And so I pushed it out on my channel, and I had a couple of other things on my channel. I'd not really done anything. I'd done some woodworking. I used to make longboards in my
Oh, cool.
workshop, and so I was a skateboarder way back. And I couldn't get parts during the pandemic, so that kind of fell through. And the woodworking really didn't wasn't. It was just a lot of work, like B-roll and putting all this stuff together for the woodworking videos. And so I'm like, maybe the slot car thing. I don't know anything about it, but maybe it becomes something. So I posted a few videos, and then it just started taking off. And I started asking questions, and I started meeting people really fast. And you start meeting people like John Albright, who's a fantastic tuner and has tons of knowledge. And
Hmm.
George was one of the first Area 51 Raceway. He was one of the first people to reach out to me after I started posting a couple videos, and really was huge help in getting the channel started and just helping me with my knowledge. And so I feel like I was like making videos that I really didn't know about. I was just like, "Hey, this is a cool car," you know. I'm just follow me because I'm having fun learning about all this stuff.
Okay, good. I'm not alone. Okay, good. It's not just
No,
me. It's-
so like right off the bat, I was like the whole, you know, I what do they call the syndrome where you, um, oh, imposter syndrome
oh yeah.
was
Okay.
was, was living and breathing in me at the moment because I was like doing these videos, and in the back of my mind was like, man, I need to learn more about this so I can talk more intelligently. And so I just invested all my spare time in researching and learning about slot cars. And we were about a year in to the channel and a year into slot cars. And the only thing we'd ever done is ran digital Carrera. And we were
Okay.
like, there's got to be a track close to us. So we did a little bit of research and found Cincy slots. And we're like, hey, they race on Thursday nights. Let's just go down and watch a race. So we know, like, what does a race night look like at some club? So took half a day off work, and we all climb in the car and we drive down to Cincy slots, and we walk in the door, and Daryl Rogers, who's in the chat every Tuesday, hey, Marty, that's awesome. You guys showed up tonight. He's like, you going to race? I'm like, no, we don't have anything. We didn't bring any cars with us. We just wanted to come watch a race. And he's like, I've got spare cars. And he made us race that night. And then that's when the community of slot cars really started to open up for me. I was like, wow, there's a lot of really good people. And that first experience, I mean, people had been warning me about experiences that they'd had at commercial tracks.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, there's like, they're the big evil thing. But we walked into Cincy Slots, and it was the exact opposite. We got welcomed there. Like, all these people that race there every Thursday night have become amazing friends to us. And we love, I mean, we drive 2 hours, Joe, to race for 14 minutes of
Oh,
track
it's that
time.
far. I didn't realize it was that
It's
far.
it's it's hour
Two.
and 50 it's hour and 55 minutes from my house.
I
Yeah,
wish. I wish I
and
had
it's
that.
worth
Yeah.
every minute that we drive down there because we have such a great time. It's competitive racing from top to bottom of the list, but
Nice.
it's more about the people. And so, like, that's been the start of my journey. That's where the journey started with slot cars, and it's just continued to grow. From each new thing that we've tried.
Hmm.
So like we did the racing at the club, and that was cool. And that's like, okay, let's build a car, let's scratch build, and we'll send it off to the home racing world. And then it was like people invested time and energy and effort, like George and Shotgun Dave and Harry Wise and Lee and Tad and all these guys that are big scratch builders. They were like helping us build our first cars. And so then that gained all that new knowledge, and I turn around and share it on the channel. And that's all I can do, and that's what I do. That's what I
That's
love about it.
awesome.
It's been
Oh
an
man.
amazing journey.
Yeah, no kidding. That's awesome. That was a great story. I'm like, he answered like 10 of my questions already. This is gonna be a really short interview. All right, no, it's
No.
awesome.
Well, I mean, like, there's always deeper pieces to that,
No,
right?
of course, yeah. We were just
Oh,
talking before, and you were saying something about the Broadway, and then you were saying, "Oh, I could do this," and I because my one of my questions was, and you kind of answered it. I was like, what was the trigger point? What really prompted you to say, "Oh no, let me start doing this. Let me put myself in front of a camera and start talking about this."
okay, yeah. So I years ago I decided late in life that I wanted to audition for our local community theater. And what at Christmas time they always do a Christmas musical, and my favorite musical at Christmas or any time is White Christmas. And so about let's see, probably 12, 13 years ago they did White Christmas, and I chickened out. I went
Okay.
to where they were doing the auditions. I walked up to the door, saw the sign on it, White Christmas auditions, and I turned around and got back in my car and left. I chickened out. And 5 years later, they do it again because it's a very popular, it's a very successful show for the local community theater.
Okay.
So this time I walked up to the door, and as I was getting ready to turn around and back out again, a friend of mine walked up behind me who had been trying to get me to come to the rehearsal or to the audition. Says, "Hey, you're here to audition. Great. Come on, let's go." They kind of drug me in, and if I knew what I was getting into, I'd never would have done it. But it ended up being one of the greatest experiences of my life. It challenged me in lots of new ways, but one of the things that I did was I thought, there's a lot of people that probably feel the same way I did, scared to death to go audition. What are they going to ask me to do? Wasn't a theater kid, so I didn't go through any of that as a
Hmm.
young kid. Maybe people would like to know what that's like, and maybe I might inspire somebody my age to do that. And so I started journaling, like video blogging
Yeah.
with my phone on my lunch hour a couple times a week, and giving people. So, I made an announcement. Hey guys, I got cast in White Christmas. I'm going to give you a weekly update on where I'm at in my headspace because this is going to be super challenging. I'm already in over my head, but I want to share my journey with you. And so I started sharing that story, and I got to the end of the performance, and like it was an amazing experience. It changed my life in a bunch of different ways. It gave me confidence in things that I never had confidence in. But one of the things that it taught me was I was very like what you get in the camera is the same thing you get if you meet me in person.
Yeah.
I'm the same person. I like even though like civic theater is drama and being dramatic, I'm already that way in real life, right? So like there's no act for me to do that. That's a very natural thing. So I thought when I started the YouTube channel, like it was kind of easy to be myself in front of the camera. Like I didn't get self-conscious in front of the camera.
Hmm.
And I do some other things in my life that a lot of people don't know about. Like I lead worship at my church. I had a band for years that we traveled around and performed for youth groups and youth events. And the band, that's a whole nother probably conversation, but that was an amazing part of my life as well. But that gave me, some confidence to feel comfortable in front of a camera and just talking to it and sharing, being transparent and sharing my life in that way. My
Awesome.
wife hates it. Like she's just so uncomfortable with it. And I'm like, you know what? It's just me talking to the camera, and on the other side of that
Oh,
camera.
okay, okay. Your wife hates being in front of a camera. She doesn't hate the
Right.
slot
Yeah.
cards. Okay, no, I'm like,
Well, she doesn't care. She didn't care about the slot
yeah, yeah,
cards.
okay,
I mean, she is not interested in them at all. It's not a
okay.
hobby that she's interested in.
Because I was like,
But I
what,
think
what's
but she,
happening
but
at
she's
the Ford
figured out
household?
that you know that some things have happened for me in the slot car community that I think that has probably surprised her. Like if she would show up on a Tuesday in my live stream and see that there were 100 people there
She,
tuned in just to chat, she would probably freak out. You're doing that? There's 100 people that showed up for that, and. So, yeah, it's quite funny when we talk about that. But she's got her own little side hustle going on. She collects like we live in an old house.
yeah,
It's a 1800s house here in downtown Chillicothe. It's an old Victorian, and we're fortunate. It's a beautiful place. We love it. It's our dream home. We had a chance to buy it, 3 or 4 years ago now, and it's on a street that we've always drive down and dreamed of living on, and it just kind of happened to work out. And but it was after our kids went off to college and things. So it's just Jen and I, and so it's pretty funny that she collects like vintage antique things
There
and
you
kind of
go.
resells them on Instagram. And so she's got her own little thing to keep her busy. So
So
she doesn't have
but I
time.
don't believe that she doesn't know that you have 100 viewers every Tuesday night. Like that's
She'd be shocked if she knew like my subscriber count. She was like, "How in the heck did? There's not that many people who like you."
so okay. So then that brings me to like this. Okay, so we're gonna crisscross my questions now. It's great
All
because
right.
I'm just like all over the place. So how often do slot cars come up in your daily life? Like take what's your week like leading up to Tuesday, and how many times are slot cars brought up, or are you
Oh
just so
gosh.
compartmentalized, whatever that word is, in your schedule?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a guy that likes to stay busy, so I do have a busy schedule.
Hmm.
I stay away from slot car stuff during work hours.
Okay.
Um, and the only reason is I just got to focus on work. I work for a small community bank here locally, and I love my job, and I love where I work, and I love the people I work with, and it's a great job, and I wouldn't want to mess any of that up.
Hmm.
And so I really try to stay away from things, but I will tell you that I every day slot cars are a part of my life and a big part of my life, and I'm not on the track every day, but that kind of goes in kind of spurts where I'll be down here every night for 2 or 3 weeks because I'm
Hmm.
working on a project, and then I'll take a few nights off. But this is kind of my domain, the basement. Jen doesn't come down here. She's like, "You do whatever you want downstairs," and
That
I've kind of
sounds
taken it over.
familiar. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, you know where I'm coming from. But like every evening, like one of the things that I said from the beginning, if I was going to do this YouTube thing and I was going to become a YouTube personality, or I hate the word influencer. That's not what I want to be, or that's not
No,
really my goal,
CCs,
right?
right? Or
Yeah,
I'm trying to coin that phrase. CC, a
yeah,
content creator.
yeah.
You're a content.
Content creator,
You're
right?
creating
Yeah, I
content.
want to create stuff that helps people learn and grow in their own slot car journey. I always said that I wanted to be accessible for people. So if somebody sends me a message, I want to return it. So if somebody comments on a video, I want to return that comment, even if it's like, "Hey, thanks for commenting." But I wanted to be available for people to ask questions, and so I probably get 30 to 50 messages a week through various, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, email. I let people, like, I give people my phone number all the time. I'm not afraid about having that stuff out there in the wild, because I want to have those conversations with people. If I can save somebody some money to help them make the right decision about what they get into from a slot car standpoint, I want to do that because I want people to enjoy and have the same joy that I have, when I get a new slot
Absolutely.
car, right? And
Absolutely.
so, and for me, I did a ton of research early on so that I wouldn't make those mistakes, and I still made those mistakes.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And people are going to make mistakes, and it's just part of learning about slot cars and learning about the hobby. But if I can help people save some money, help people, make the right decisions or make the best decisions for them,
Yeah.
I want to help people. And so, like, and it's funny when somebody will send me an email, and I'll be on my lunch, and I'll say, "Oh, I've got time," and I'll respond, and like, they always go, "I just sent you that message 5 minutes ago, and you've already responded to me." And I'm like, "Well, I had a moment. I wanted to take advantage of it, and you know, I've got a lot to say on the subject on your
Yeah.
question." So I love that piece of the content creation for me, and where that's coming back for me is, I'm doing this fast lap challenge which is totally stolen from Shotgun Dave and what he did on his track on the Wood Oval. And I've already got people sending me messages saying, "Hey, I got a car on the way. I got a car on there's coming cars on the way," and like I'm excited about running something that somebody else built on my track. But it, that I think that stuff happens because I respond to people, and I do that because I care about that, and I see that from so many other creators. And at the end of Tuesday night, B Slots asked about the health of the hobby,
Okay.
and coming off the heels of you know Billy and Amanda, making their announcement,
Yeah.
and that doesn't feel very healthy for the hobby, right? And I kind of pray for them. I hope things are good for them. I watch their video, um, and I've always had a good relationship with Billy and Amanda, and so I want the best for them, and I hate that they're no longer going to have the business, right?
Yeah.
But for me, like the health of the hobby is different than that, and I feel like we are in a time in this hobby where I'm not sure it's ever been healthier, because I think the loudest voices are the ones that are kind and caring and wanting the best for people and wanting to help people. I kept hearing from others early on, don't go to the commercial track because nobody's going to help you there. They want to take care of themselves, and they want to. And I'm like, you know what? That feels like it was in the 50s and 60s when this started, in the 70s. But it's like that's had to die out, right? By now, because the slot car. I mean, it felt like slot cars died in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and RC kind of took over. But then once I got in, I realized, holy cow, there's a great heartbeat in this community. There's a great heartbeat in this hobby. I think that it's really healthy. Tell me a year that's had as many new car releases as 2024.
Well, that's it.
It's unbelievable how many new releases we've had and new liveries, and how many. I mean, Revo Slot themselves, every time they release a car, they release 3 versions of it, and they've done that 4 or 5 times all year long. I mean, there have been more cars this year than. I mean, I've only been in the hobby for 3 years, but there have been more cars this year than the other 2 years combined. And so that tells me that these boutique type slot car companies,
Yeah.
like Revo Slot, NSR, Thunder Slot, they're pumping out more cars because people are buying cars, and there's a lot more people buying cars,
It's
or they wouldn't put
definitely,
them out.
yeah, absolutely. And I feel it's definitely started a like kind of like a secondary wave, right? Like you have like guys like me who's come in and, I had slot car track as a kid, didn't touch it since. Going to a
Yeah,
hobby shop looking for something for my dad for trains. I see the Skylectric set. I'm like, Back to the Future versus Knight Rider. Are you kidding me? I'm like,
yeah,
what is it? This thing is still a thing, and now, well, I'm the guy.
right,
No, I gotta buy one of them all. Gotta catch them all,
yeah,
right? Like it's a
yeah,
Pokemon for for slot heads, and
right, yeah,
it's
exactly,
there's definitely different levels and different waves, and that's for sure. It's a different, and I'm glad. I'm actually happy that it's. I'm not happy. I don't want to say it like that, but like it's it's nice that we're still a small niche community. We're not over, you know,
right. I think that the potential,
oversaturated is what I want to say. Yeah.
yeah, it's not oversaturated for sure, but the potential for the hobby of growth is big. I think, um, like the conversations I've had with people I would say are influencers in the slot car industry.
Hmm.
Just here recently, had a great conversation with Steve from Slot Car Corner when I was at the Nationals. Um, Got to meet Oliver from Professor Motor, um, and I think for those people, it's about getting tracks and starter sets, and like Marco from Electric Dreams.
Yeah.
I mean, they ran 20% off sale for Black Friday and over last weekend, and that goal was to sell track sets, which pays off in the long run with
Absolutely.
cars and parts and everything for them. but it was like people don't get in the hobby unless they build a track at their house. Um, for most people.
Yeah.
And so like that's the important thing is making it accessible for people. You know, not everybody can build a 24-foot table, 8 foot wide in their house and dedicate that space. I get that. But a little starter set, you can tear that thing down and set it back up, you know, 10, 15 minutes
No,
and
absolutely.
be racing cars. So,
So before we get into more present questions, maybe my last question of like, just to reminisce a little bit, what was the well, not really reminisce, but what was the first car that you ever got a hold of that really left an impression for you?
I go back to this, uh, the nine, the Carrera 917, that Porsche, it was what got me excited about like discovering all the other types of
Okay,
slot cars.
that was the okay.
This one was, it was always, it's my fastest career car. It's been beat up, it's crashed, there's chips out of the body, but it's still, when I look at it, I'm just like, that's the car that started it all. Now, what changed my journey from, not that we still don't run Carrera stuff. I mean, I have one of the new NASCARs up on the shelf that I can't wait to get tuned and mess around with digitally. Dusty got one, Jean Marc maybe got one. So I'm thinking it's going to be a great series for us to run digital on the track. I bought a slot at GT40 that I did about 3 or 4 videos on. That I pretty much destroyed that car. I converted it to digital. I broke everything you could possibly break on it. But it opened my eyes to the possibility of analog cars, and like building a converter for my track so that I could run analog and digital. But it also opened my eyes to like how cool some of these other performance type cars are, like the performance chassis. And so then I picked up, my second non-Carrera car was the NSR 908.
There you go.
Still one of my favorite cars, man. This 908s are amazing. They are so much fun to drive. And again, I destroyed this car learning about it, tearing it apart, putting it back together, trying to learn how to tune. And then when we met Andrea at the Nationals, he pretty much debunked all of my tuning understanding by making it so simple. It's like, oh, you do this, you do this, you do this. It's done. It's done. You don't even need front wheels. They're just aesthetic, right? And it was we're all watching that, and I'm recording it, and we get to the end, and I'm like, is it okay if I post this on YouTube? And he's like, oh yeah, it'd be great. Just tag me in it. I said, awesome. And then I watched it, and I was editing it. I'm like, this can't be true. So I grabbed this car, and I did everything he said to do to it. And it ran a tenth and a half faster than Roxy, which is what I took to the Nationals to race that
Oh
I
my
have
god,
like
that's awesome.
180, $170 in.
Less is more, man. Less is more. We're
It was
living.
unbelievable. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's all I needed to do. This is great. But then I shared that knowledge with like, on my YouTube channel, and that video has gotten a ton of just comments. People are like, it can't be this easy, or so. Yeah. So I think those two cars
Okay.
really opened up my eyes to the potential. And then I got my first Thunder slot, which I always from day one when I was researching, I loved the '60s Can-Am series cars. Absolutely love that time frame, that era. And so the late '60s, early '70s, and so Thunder slot cars really jumped at me because that's really all they do, except for the Mustang was the big change for them. And so I got my first Thunder slot, and that was a gift from Daryl.
Oh wow.
The night that we went to Cincy Slots the first night, and he threw it on the track, and I raced it, and I just fell in love with it. I'm like, oh, this car, I've got to buy this car tonight. I've got to find it on the shelf at Cincy Slots and take it home with me. And at the end of the night, Daryl walks over to my box walks over to me and he hands it to me. He's like, take that home, run some laps with it, get used to it, tear it apart, figure out how I tuned it. You'll learn a lot from that car. And he was right. I learned so much from the way he tuned that car. and it's still one of my fastest. I mean, I won this past vintage class with it. It's still just it's hard to beat. It's
Nice.
such a good car.
Nice.
And so the Thunder slots really kind of were that NSR slotted Thunder slot really was the game changer for me from a car standpoint. And then you discover Revo slot, which is a whole different beast. And it's like, okay, it's not quite as fast, but I love the chassis design. I love the aluminum chassis,
Hmm.
and they do such a great job finishing their
Yeah,
slot cars.
they're beautiful.
So yeah, they're beautiful, and then they released that Group Two car, and that's like demolition derby on the track together. They're just so much fun to race. It's like, man, these companies, they're all finding their their path to slot car people in different ways, and that makes them all really good. Like, so Riva Slot's doing their thing, and people are loving that brand, and NSR is doing their thing, and people are loving that brand. Thunder Slot's doing their thing for the same reasons, and it's just it's cool to see from the outside looking in. It's cool to see what appears that those companies are having a lot of success right now
Yeah.
in the industry and in the hobby, and that's exciting because that means more cars down the road, and yeah, that's more money out of my pocket. But
I was
you know,
just about to say, if
it,
Jen was here, my Jen, she'd be like, "All I'm seeing is," because she says it all the time. All I'm seeing is money. Are you just talking and it's just money?
yeah, man,
Because you're
I get
saying
it.
that, and I'm like, yeah, all these new cars coming out. And
So what,
so going down that, what has been what's been your biggest challenge in your stock car journey up until now?
oh gosh, the biggest challenge for me is I think I've tried to do everything kind of under a budget. It gets you get excited about cars and buying cars and collecting cars, and I still don't have a gigantic car collection. To be honest with you, I'm very picky. I want to buy cars that I want. I
Yeah.
just don't want to buy just random stuff just to review on my channel. Um, and like so, that's been the biggest challenge is trying to be financially just be good stewards of my money, you know,
Yeah.
and and not overspend and show people that you don't have to buy every car that comes out to really enjoy the hobby. Um, there's always things you can do with the cars that you have, and it's always good to go back and revisit cars. But I think the biggest challenge for me from the whole hobby is for the YouTube side of things. Um, I, I sometimes feel pressure from the YouTube channel when I show up to a track to race. And if I have a bad night on the track, they're like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And they're probably right. I probably don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to slot cars.
I don't think anybody knows what
But
they're talking
but like I got to the nationals race and I got lucky and ran a really fast lap and qualified and raced in like the fast heat in the top eight, and I had no business being there. And
Well, why?
I
You
let
made it.
that I know, but I let that get in my head, and then I'm like, if I fail, man, people are going to look at my channel different, and so
Mm.
I've got to be careful. Like, gosh, do I put myself out there to be ridiculed and made fun of, and like, and then I'm about halfway through that first heat. I was shaking so bad. My brother was like, "You need to calm down. What is wrong with you? You never get nervous about stuff like this." And I just had to shake that off and say, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. If I finish last, I finish last. I'm not going to let that. I'm not going to worry about what people think of me and my channel based on whether I finished first or last in this race. And I was letting that like really impact me. And so like for me, that's been the biggest challenge of separating that and say, sometimes you're going to have a good race and sometimes you're not going to have a good race if you're racing out there. And so it made me question that should I put that stuff on my channel? And then I realized maybe that's why people tune in to me is because I do put that stuff. I always get this is the funniest thing. You always go, should I put that mistake that I made in my video? Because I can easily edit that out where I made
Mm-hmm.
that mistake, and I'm never smart enough to edit that out. I always leave it, and I always get messages from people that say, "Man, when you showed that you made that soldering mistake and you made a bad solder joint, that was the best part of that video because, daggone it, I did the exact same thing, and like you and me, we're the same." And so
The
like
human
that's
connection. The human connection.
I decided like I have to just show that stuff. If I fail, I'm going to fail, and I'm going to fail in front of the camera. If I'm going to succeed, I'm going to succeed. But that's probably been the biggest challenge for me in the whole slot car journey
Mm-hmm.
is how the slot car journey is my slot car journey is very public because I choose to create content about it, and so that's been the biggest challenge.
Nice. That's wow. That's awesome. Um, so then, so following up to that, like, what's been the hardest lesson to learn?
Oh gosh, the hardest lesson for me in oh gosh, I think the hardest lesson for me has been you're always going to have a person that I've had a few people that troll me
Oh,
and like
you're that popular. It's good. That's a good thing.
well, and that's what people kept telling me. They're like, "Oh, that means you've made it." I'm like, "No, I like it really bothers me because
Mm-hmm.
I want not that I want people to like me. Don't mistake that. It's I want people to get something from my content. And if they took the time to like poke fun at me, I'm I've I've got thick skin. I can handle that. Like give
Yeah.
me a hard time. Yeah, that actually makes me feel good because like it's just I grew up in a family that we just harassed each other, and my grandpa was always kidding me and teasing us kids, and like I just grew up in that environment, and it meant he loved us, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
people show affection in different ways, but sometimes there was some early on there was some really brutal, like, why are you that you are completely wrong. I'm watching your video. You can't even drive a car. I'm like, and I would respond like, nope, you're right. I'm new in this hobby. I haven't learned to drive a car yet. I'm learning and I'm growing. And I was able to do that early on. But as I've gained experience and knowledge and feel like I'm probably not a beginner anymore, those things have a little more impact on me. And that's probably been the hardest thing for me is I want people to get a lot out of my content. But I don't ever want to offend somebody or make them mad. And sometimes that's hard to balance. So, but from the hobby side of things, there hasn't really been anything that, something that's difficult to overcome. My first scratch build car, that was, I didn't know if I could get it done. Like the first time I put it on the track,
Yeah.
it went sideways, like it was not square. And I was like, when I soldered it, it was square, and then something happened, and I put it on the track, and it would track it would track sideways. It was hilarious, and so I told George, I'm like, what do I do? This is so frustrating. My, he's like, buy a new soldering iron, you dumbass. Like what? I'm like, you're trying to use like a $5 soldering iron from Menards, like you 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 need better tools. And so I changed my tools and I was able to fix that stuff, right? So that's probably been the biggest challenge is acquiring all the things that you need to be good at tuning or to be, you know, oh, now I need a tire truer. And then Andrea blew that out of the water. You don't even need wheels, tires. So yeah,
Awesome.
that's the hardest thing, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so now, so now you're going to the different, the different clubs. I mean, you've been to a few nationals and whatnot, and you're
Yeah.
experiencing because you just mentioned tire truers. So everybody knows that I'm going to bring up this question. I love that you run silicones. I think
Yeah.
silicones make so much sense for Carrera track. I don't want to start a big debate here or nothing, but now
No.
that you've had experience with the different types of tires, what are your thoughts? And what do you, if you had to choose, like, what are you basically like? What do you prefer? Or Is
Okay.
it the right tire for the right track, or like what are your give me some throw me some knowledge?
Okay. So I would say the exact same thing that we run at a club that runs silicones. So if you're practicing for where you're going to run, it makes sense to run the same type of tire, right?
Hmm.
It doesn't make sense to like prep tires for, rubber tires for your home track and then take that same car and have to pull those rubber tires off and put silicones on to run at the club. And so we chose to stay with silicone because with Carrera track, I felt like they were so much better. And I wasn't, like people like to treat rubber tires. We didn't have a truer early on. And so silicones come really, really good. They slip on and they're really pretty true. Trying to true a pair of silicone tires is a nightmare. Like it's a
I don't.
12-hour experience,
Yeah.
right? Takes forever. And so I'm a silicone guy. I really do like silicones. Now, on my wood routed track, there you
Sorry.
that's
Sorry.
the answer. That's the right answer.
That's not. It's. There's a few people who might be watching this who it's just guys stop
Yeah, sure.
busting my bees for this.
Yeah, but
Marty
from
said
from that
it. Marty
standpoint,
said it.
I
Yeah.
do. I like silicones. We have a great relationship with the people who own Super Tire.
Hmm.
And then I got to meet Steve from Slot Car Corner. That's Quick Slicks,
Yeah.
and we use both of those brands. I really like Super Tire on the Carrera track. They do really really well. Their compound is just we keep a clean track.
Yep.
Every time we run, I clean my track really good,
Hmm.
and then we clean our tires really good, and we have great success with silicones. I've not really gone to a track that is a rubber track. The Nationals race was a silicone. They ran quick slicks. The specific quick slicks, the red compound. So
Okay.
everybody had to run the same tire. And that tire wasn't great on the Scale Auto track. Let's be honest with you. It was pretty slippery because I think that Scale Auto track is made for rubber tires to be trued and treated. Because Andrea put the new Lola prototype on,
Okay.
and he had rubber tires on that prototype, and it ran almost 2/10 faster than the fastest lap from the weekend. Those rubber tires really hooked up on the Scale Auto,
Yep.
and so I think the track surface has a lot to do with it. We run on a wood track down in Miami, Ohio. Our friend Butch, and he runs silicones, and they're wonderful on that wood track. But
Silicone's
I've
on wood.
heard
Really?
silicones on wood. Yeah,
Wow.
he's got it's an epoxy paint that he's at the surface, and the silicones just stick to it really, really well. But then I've also been on a track that ran treated. We have a friend that has. I haven't run on his track yet, but he runs foam on his wood track, but he puts glue down.
Okay.
And so I've not run in a surface that's been glued. Now, for the home racing world scratch build stuff, we're doing urethanes. And what I noticed on the wood track, the urethane lays down pretty quick.
Hmm.
And so you can get a groove really fast with urethane. And they do really well on the painted wood surface. Paul Gage tires, not had any luck with them on Carrera. But I will tell you, Bobcat tires, his urethane tires, it's a different urethane compound. They're really close to silicone on this track.
Okay.
They're really good. And so I'm kind of leaning towards urethane for the oval, just because they just do really well on that latex painted surface. Now, John Albright, my buddy John, he will tell you treated rubber. There's no better tire than those NSRs or
Hmm.
Thunder Slot tires or anything like that. And I think that he runs on scale electric track at his house, and that probably makes perfect sense for that track and
Okay.
that track system. So I think there's a place and a time for all the compounds, or we wouldn't have the choice, right? But I have to lean towards silicone because I like running a clean track, and I like the way silicone tires stick to Carrera track.
It's
They
like
get
talking
really
to
good track.
myself. I don't know what it is. It's like
Yeah,
talking to myself. I love it.
yeah, you're in good company.
Thank you. Uh, um, so let's talk a bit about like now that you've actually done a few of these races and you're racing on your track and you went from a Carrera nice technical track to a 4 lane and now you're building your wood track, your chili bowl. I like that name. I
Yeah,
don't know if you like the chili
yeah,
bowl.
it's growing on me.
And what techniques have you adopted? Like, are you looking? And this is what I always like to ask like racers. Like, are you looking ahead? Are you looking at the car? Are you feathering that trigger? What kind of like racer are you? You know, like what techniques?
So
That was
I
like 20
like to poke.
questions in one. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I like to poke fun at myself. I have a really bad habit of over driving a car. I love to push a car into the turn, and and that's what I think that's why I enjoy racing Revo slots so much. They they're a little more forgiving for that type of driving.
Okay.
And so the NSR at the Eastern Nationals was a very people give me a hard time for saying this. It was a very European style track. And people can say what they want, but you go look at all the big races in Europe and look at how that track is laid out. And it's very technical, tight turns, and then you've got straights in the middle of all these different turns. There's these little straight shoots, and it's just the European style is definitely not a flowy track like what I've got behind me. I think here in the States, and I'm not super familiar with what everybody builds, but like when you build a Carrera track, it seems to be a little more flowy, just naturally based on the geometry of the track, and that's what a lot of people have here in North America, right? A lot of Carrera. So that the track at the Nationals was it felt very European, and that took a different driving style. And then if you tune the car like Andrea said to tune the NSR, you have to adopt a different driving style. And so I think that that's one of the things that I'm working on is trying to the best way I can explain it is to keep the rear behind the guide and to prevent the car from breaking loose. And so that comes down to my trigger, my finger, how I when I watched Andrea drive, he was on off, on off, on off, on off, on off.
Wow. Okay.
And then my style was based on how I had my car tuned. I was feather, 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 in and out of the real tight turns and that technical piece. And he would get a blip in where I had no chance of getting a blip in. I'm like, how did he squeeze
Yeah.
that extra little? And that's where he was finding time. And he was finding time in the worst lanes. He was running faster. So it was 8 lane track, red on the outside. There was no crossover. So big lane differences between the outside and the inside. The two inside lanes had two R1 turns that were they're just like 90 degrees. I mean, it just was just a short little. He was running faster times in the two garbage lanes, the purple and black, the two inner lanes, than anybody else was running in any of the other lanes. And it was all because of his technique.
Wow.
But that's how he had his car tuned. So he came in and he didn't have a car. So he borrowed a car and they had pre-tuned it based on how they like cars. And he ran 2 minutes of practice and then took the car apart, took out all of the weight, everything, no ballast at all of the weight out, raised the front axle all the way up as high as he could get it, changed the wheels and tires to NSR's like pre-trued. They look like rubber bands almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're so thin, right? So that they're up out of the way with no chance of touching.
So is he a? So is that a? He's a braid rider. He rides the braids instead of the wheels.
Yeah. So basically, you're relying on the triangle, right?
Yeah. Hundred
You're
percent.
relying on the guide in the rear, and so that just took a different driving style. But what I realized is when I tuned my 908 to do that thing, I could be way more aggressive. So it came back to me a little bit because I kind of overdrive turns sometimes. Well, that car could handle it because it was so light. It's only like 47 grams or something.
Oh
Like,
wow.
yeah, I mean, it is as light as you can possibly get that car. And it was, and so like I'm learning, every time I go out, I focus on something different, um, from a standpoint of how I drive the car. But the biggest thing is keeping the rear tires behind the guide and keep just let that car, like, in that, a lot of times that's getting your controller set right too.
Hmm.
I mean, I know, like, from a digital standpoint, you don't have a lot. You've got a little, if you're using True Speed on digital, you've got some sensitivity that you can play with, but you can't really, you can control the brakes through the
Right now, I
computer.
appreciate Frankenslot so much. Not to cut you off for that. The
Yeah.
Frankenslot. I don't understand how this is not a more popular gun. The
Oh,
the tuning
we
ability
have,
on in the
they're
menu
fantastic.
is just like I haven't even begun. And the
Yeah.
other day, Jen was like, "Something wrong with my car. Something's wrong with my car." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, bad motor, bad motor." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. I changed the batteries in the controller. It reset. Sometimes that happens, right?"
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
she felt it. There was something weird. She's like, "I'm just a little
Yeah.
slower." And I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm using her controller, and I'm like, "Yeah, this car's not responding." It's the controller. It just by
Yeah.
it was off by one. The curve was off by one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's amazing. And
yeah.
and I can, so now I'm getting to the point with my controller. I've got a DeFalco. It's got, sensitivity brake and traction control. And I'm trying to learn on the fly. Like, I feel what the car's doing, and I can make it I know that I need to adjust my sensitivity, or I know that I need to adjust my brake or my traction control. And it's just little tweaks.
Yeah.
And I can, if I'm over driving a turn, I know that I can go, all right, I'm gonna pull my sensitivity down I'm gonna tone it down just a tad. And then all of a sudden now I'm through that turn, smooth, and I'm not sliding out too far. We got into this big conversation at dinner, the night before we all got to the hotel when we drove up to Michigan to the the Nationals, and there was like five of us that were there waiting for everybody else to show up. We all stayed at the same place, and we're like, let's go grab dinner. And we're sitting there and we're talking, and Steve, one of the guys with us, he was like, "You got 6 degrees of play. So from 0 to 6 degrees, any more than 6 degrees, slide out, then you're losing speed." And I'm like, "I'll get my protractor out, Steve." And and 6 degrees, I can leave myself. But he's right. Like, you can't measure the 6 degrees, but you can feel it and see it in the car if you allow that car to get too sideways, just how much speed you lose.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's what I'm focusing on now when I drive, is just keeping the rear end of that car behind the guide and try to just be smooth.
Tell us one
Everybody,
thing nobody knows about you.
one thing that nobody knows about me, gosh, I probably, some people know this about me, because I don't really hide it on my channel, but my faith is a big part of my life, and sometimes that's a turn off for people, and so I'm always really careful because I never want that to be an issue or problem. But I, like, music is a big part of my life. I play guitar and I sing and I lead worship at my church every Sunday, and I love it. It's it's super important to me, and so, like, there's a lot of people that don't know that. If you go back, one of my first videos, you mentioned it earlier. I It was during the pandemic, and I basically played a bunch of songs. We weren't gathering as a church, so I just put a bunch of songs out there that I sang, and so people could sing along, kind of. And I'll get guys that go back and watch some of my old content, and they'll find that video, and I'm like, they'll ask me questions about it. Can you explain this video? Why is this on your channel? Why do you need to delete this? And end up in these amazing conversations with people, that are pretty cool. That, I think that I would never have had otherwise if I hadn't left that video of me singing songs about church and Jesus and whatever. If I would have deleted that, I would have never had that conversation with them. And it's given me an opportunity to, gosh, I mean, it's given me an opportunity to pray for people and people to share things about their life that I would never have known, and maybe they would never have shared with somebody, But after having that conversation with me, they felt comfortable saying, "Hey, I've got this issue in my life, and it doesn't really have anything to do with slot cars, but it's really impacting me." And you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
those are amazing conversations. And sometimes life is about so many other things,
Yeah, of
right,
course.
than our just our hobby, and that always gives me a glimpse into like people they open up and they get real with me sometimes that maybe they wouldn't have. We would have just always talked about slot cars, and I'll talk slot cars all you want. It's obvious, but sometimes when I get a chance to just to somebody tell me what's going on in their life, and then I can kind of say, hey, here's my experience, here's what I've had, and here's kind of what I lean on, and here's where I find my hope, and it's just a different story, but it's an important piece of my life, and so yeah, that's one thing that people don't know about me.
I've heard you say this a few times. You lead worship. Are you a pastor? Are you a deacon? Or what's? Let's dive into that a little bit more. What do you mean by
Oh
when you lead
yeah,
worship? You lead in just song when it's time to sing, or are you actually doing
sure.
a
I'm
sermon?
using the word worship as song and music. Yeah, I'm like the band director, leader, of worship. I'm the guy that I play guitar and I sing and lead the church in songs.
Okay.
So that's my job. I guess I would call myself a pastor, because through that I am doing the job of you know of a pastor, and there's lots of different ways to do that. I was a youth pastor for probably, I don't know, like 15 years, junior high and high school. Led mission trips and youth rallies and all kinds of stuff, and it's been an amazing part of my life. And I got to be my kids' youth pastor too,
Okay.
which was fun, to watch them grow up and form their own faith and question things and help them through things. It was an important time for me as a dad to be a part of my kid's life that way. And
Absolutely.
then and then I coached soccer for a number of years. Played soccer in high school, and when that sports kind of started for us here in the states, and where I went to school, we didn't have a soccer team and program until like the mid '80s, and so I was on one of those first soccer teams, and so I started coaching because we didn't have a lot of coaches in the area, and I ended up coaching a high school team for a number of years. And then my kids got old enough to where they could play, and so I'm like, how can I coach all these high school kids and not coach my own kids? So then I quit coaching high school and I dropped back down to coach little league and kind of watch them grow up and play. And that was one of the biggest joys of my life, is watching my kids play a sport that I loved, and they probably were way better at it than I was. Um, then that's a source of pride for me, is being able to watch my kids play so many soccer games and have so much fun doing it. Um, but yeah, the youth pastor piece was pretty important. Now I'm getting older. I'm not sure I'm as relevant as I was 15 years ago to some of these kids, but it was yeah, it was fun. So
Oh, that's
uh,
amazing. Good for you.
yeah, man, it's you look back at things that you've done in your life, and there have been times when I was like, yeah, that was not the right path for me to go on. But that I've never questioned my learning to play guitar so that I could sing at church, and being involved in kids' lives. Um, they can be influenced by so many different things. So that's what I love, like what Pete's doing um, in his where he's calling out the kids in his live stream Sunday mornings.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, and like that's awesome. Like building from that age up is super important. Helping them find their way. And so that was always my thing. Is I always felt like I had a responsibility to help kids find their way, whether it was through their faith or through soccer or through. I was not a great coach, but I always said I hope that I helped my kids become better human beings. That was my goal. If they learned a little soccer, that's awesome. If we won a few games, that's awesome. But if they were better human beings in the end, then I did my job as a coach. I felt like that's as a job as youth pastor, and as a worship leader on Sundays when I sing and lead the church. I'm just hoping that I'm helping people find their way, in whatever path they're taking. So
Hey, if
yeah,
Ohio wasn't that far, I'd be there on Sunday. I think it's gonna be a
yeah,
personal
man.
mission to come see you in church.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I'm gonna
Well,
come
we
see
have a
you in
live
church.
stream. You could always watch the live stream, but man, you know how sound is on live stream. Like, ooh,
Yeah, oh, we'll talk
sometimes,
about that after. I got plans for that, and I'm like, oh, I need all the help I can get. All right, you're on vacation.
yeah.
Food, accommodations, and clothing are provided. What are the three things that you bring with you?
Oh gosh, the three things on vacation that I bring with me. I bring my speed cube with me. I'm a Rubik's cube,
Oh,
speed
Rubik's.
cube.
Oh,
Yeah, it's to help my mind shut down. Sometimes I struggle going to sleep sometimes, and I'll go solve my cube a couple
I
times, and
struggle
that'll.
staying awake sometimes after time. Okay, you struggle
Yeah,
with
well,
it.
yeah, I do that too sometimes too. So I don't usually throw that in the bag just so I have something to it's like a fidget toy, right?
Mhm.
Gosh, usually I have a book. Um, Vacationing is usually the only time I can slow down enough to actually read, and I do enjoy reading. My wife is a ferocious reader. She reads multiple books a week. I just there's no way I can keep up with her, but I'm good for maybe 4 or 5 a year. But I usually get a lot of them done when on vacation. So yeah, always seem to bring a book. And gosh, what's the third thing? Yeah, I always bring my appetite on vacation.
There you go. That's it.
It's you
It's just fun
always
questions. There's no right or wrong
yeah,
answer. This
I
is
always find time to like find good places to eat. My kids decided to move far away from home for college, and now they've just stayed there. Maybe we'll get them back one day, but they're in Colorado. I talk about that a lot. They live in Fort Collins, in northern Colorado, and we'll go out here in a few weeks because they're not coming home for Christmas. And like I'm already looking forward to my favorite restaurants there. There's a breakfast place that we go to. It's called the Silver Grill that has the best cinnamon rolls, and then they're huge and they'll cut them in half and make French toast out of them. It's amazing. I'm already like thinking about that. Like in 2 weeks, I'm gonna get, you know, the cinnamon roll French toast at the Silver Grill. So appetite is one thing I do take on vacation
that's
with me.
amazing.
I wasn't exaggerating. Good food. I'm always in for good food.
Awesome.
Good food, good conversation.
All right. Well, speaking of good conversation, my jumbled brain. I think we covered everything. You've crisscrossed so many that I can't even like backtrack. But it's been a fantastic. Right now, I think an hour. I'll try to cut it down a little bit with some of my jumbling. Maybe cut out every time I spoke. But what I always end my interviews with this question: what is the one innovation that you would like to see in this hobby moving forward?
Oh, innovation. I think that, ooh, that's a good one. Um, I think we've got to figure out a way to get the younger generation involved. And so, can we create? I mean, I think digital was a first part of that, um, making it more like a gaming experience,
Hmm.
where you
That's
where you
that's why I
add.
got in. Not saying I'm
Yeah,
the only
right.
one.
That's why I got in.
Yeah.
The entertainment. I was like, holy, the pit stop. You can pass people and pit stops. That's I'm in, right? And so how do we get that? So as an adult, that was easy. Like I jumped in because I have the means to, right? I could a little bit of disposable income. I could buy my track and build the track, and then of course, two other people, my brother and John Mark, jumped in, and
Yeah.
so then the three of us were building this track,
Well, that's
together,
it. That helps.
and that helps, right? So, but how do we create some clubs that are great partners in the community, not just the slot car community, but the community that like I would love to start a club here in Chillicothe,
Hmm.
but finding a retail space, all the retail space is expensive, right? And the business model from a hobby shop or a slot car club was awful. You're not going to make money. Yeah, I think the innovation has to be from
Yeah.
how do you inspire more people to join the hobby? How do you get a younger age group to join?
Absolutely.
And we're seeing it at our club at Cincy Slots. A family came in a couple weeks ago and bought a car. And
Nice.
they were like, "Oh, you race?" And so they came back on Thursday night, and they only had one car. It wasn't tuned or anything, and so they were like, opened the track up to them and said, "Okay, let's just teach you how to do this." And it was awesome to watch. I just kind of sat back and watched Bruce, the owner, and some of the other guys that are regulars, just help that whole family through a couple extra cars on the track.
Fantastic.
That's where it's going to happen, right? That's how this hobby is going to grow. Is people get treated like that when they walk into a club, they walk into a hobby shop, they they have opportunities to discover the hobby. And I think it's one of those things where you throw a car on the track and a controller in somebody's hand, and like you're going to be hooked on it.
Yeah.
Like it's fun. And then as you dive deeper, you realize I'll never get to drive that car, but I can drive it anytime I want on my track.
My
And it's
Ferraris.
not this
My Ferraris.
right.
It's just
It's not the same thing, but it kind of is.
yeah.
I mean, you're driving that F40 every time you put it on the track, and it's a blast. And it takes you places in your head where you've always dreamt of going. Yeah, I think that's the beauty of the hobby that people don't realize until they get in it. Is you know, gosh, yeah, you never you never get to drive. We're not going to be able to drive Ferraris.
No.
Not everybody gets the chance to
That's
do
it.
that.
Yeah.
But I got 4 of them on my shelf here that I can go drive anytime I want. And I
I came
paid.
across this this last question, but you did answer it before, but I think it's important that we bring it back up because even if you have to repeat yourself, I think it's the core of you. Community clearly means a lot to you. What is the one thing that you hope people get out of your videos? That's
Oh
just
gosh,
you,
yeah, man. What happens on Tuesday during the live streams? Sometimes I just sit back and I kind of well up and pride. Like I've gotten emotional a couple times on my live stream where somebody's done something for somebody else in the chat that just touches me in a way that I can't. Like I just get emotional, and I get the older I get, the easier it is for me to become emotional. But the community piece is so important to me because I see the impact that other people are having on the hobby when they're answering questions when they're encouraging people. Like that's just a beautiful thing to witness. Is somebody helping another person, and somebody's thankful for that they didn't get treated in a bad way, they didn't get made fun of. They no, there's lots of that happening in the chat, right? Like it is a bunch of guys that we poke fun at each other
yeah.
and understand that that's part of it, and it's part of the beauty of it, really. If my grandpa, if he was not giving me a hard time and teasing me about something, then something was probably wrong.
Yeah.
When and so that's kind of how that community works once you figure it out and understand it. But I think it's really important to the hobby overall, is it because it's this safe space that people can come and they can be themselves. They can ask questions that maybe they feel a little dumb to them.
Hmm.
But I always joke there are no dumb questions, only the ones that aren't asked. Right?
Yeah.
That's the dumb question if you don't ask it. There are lots of people who want to answer those questions for you. They want to help you in your journey with slot cars, and that's the beauty of what's happening on Tuesday nights. Is it would be hard for me to shut that down because um, it's just such a great space for people to gather and for people to get to know each other. And I have all these new friends that I never would have met, and we haven't met in person, but I
No.
promise these people someday it's going to happen. Someday I'm going to come up to Canada and make a tour and go see MP and Raul and you and there's so many people that I've met up there that I would love to meet. Like I got to meet Warren at the Nationals. He came down
Yeah,
and
and I wrote it as a note. I'm sorry about that. He was like a kid who was like trying to herd cats. And he was so excited. And I'm like, okay, Warren, get to the table. Yeah, but look at this guy. Look at that. We got Marty. Cut. I'm like, Warren. I felt so bad. I wanted to apologize. I didn't know if like he came up with the camera in your face and you're like, it's for Joe. And it's like, no, Warren, that's not how you bring up the shit.
Yeah.
That was great. That
Well,
was great.
he jumped up, and all of a
I
sudden he's
love
like,
him.
"Uh-oh, I did something wrong. I think I just killed the feed." But like people like that,
Yeah.
like that was the cool thing about the Nationals is I got to meet a bunch of people that were subscribers of my channel that
Nice.
I've never met in person, and like that was fantastic. And like some people were there were a few people that were there that didn't come up to me, and then they sent me a message later. I'm like, "Hey, I saw you at the Nationals." I'm like, "Why did you not come up and say hello?" Because I wanted to meet people, and that's just fall off from the from Tuesday nights. It's part of that community. I wanted to make that connection with people,
Yeah.
and that's why it's so important.
And I'm sure I speak for a lot of people when I say thank you for that. Thank you for that.
You,
You
you
know?
know, I thanks. I that means a lot. It just it's a way to discover new things about the hobby for me every week. I start off with a goal of a few things that I want to talk about, and then it always falls to the chat. Whatever the chat wants to talk about is where we go, and I that's I love that about it. The chat's always going to rule that thing, not me, because it's about the chat. It's not about me. I'm just kind of the moderator of it, but I get that a lot. I get a lot of thank yous for, hey, thanks for providing that space for us. And I go back before I started that. There was, Dave Kennedy was doing a live stream on Sundays
Hmm.
afternoons sometimes. Um, Outside of that, there wasn't a lot of live streams going on, and definitely not a live stream that was a. This is why we're here, is to help. What questions do you have?
Yeah.
Let's help the people in the chat, and so that's what it's been about since day one. Help me learn, and we'll help other people learn at the same time. That's why I love it.
Awesome. Well,
Glad you guys
guys,
participated. It means a lot.
awesome. Well, guys, I think I've taken up quite a bit of Marty's time. I appreciate it on this late
Yeah,
night.
man, no
I
worries.
thought we were going to have to reschedule again, but it was great. And
All good.
thank you for your insights. Thanks for taking the time. I don't think I can say thank you enough, but it's all good. They say never meet your heroes, but tonight that statement has been proven wrong to me. There's so many things going through my head in this interview. You're a wonderful person. It was great to meet you for 2 seconds, and boom, like I said, we went right into it. You guys have
Yeah.
to experience Marty on the phone, on a text if you have to. Please, the Wayne Gretzky. The Canadian guys we know, and the hockey fans they
He
know. The Wayne
shoots, he
Gretzky.
scores.
Yeah. The great one, Mr. Marty
That's funny.
Ford. Thank you guys for joining
Thanks,
in.
man.
Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care,
Sure.
guys.